It comes down to really two things: discipline and work. You've got to have those two things if you're going to, if it's diet, fitness, whatever your workout routine is, you've got to have that consistency and you've got to put in that work. And a lot of people, I'm sure we'll hit this again, is like, I'm just going to diet, and they do great for a week. It comes down to that work and discipline every time. And if those two things are not there, I'm sorry, you lost. And you don't need to be jacked up. I mean, this is such a good learning point. Like you are judged on your appearance, regardless. So if you're looking sloppy and you're nasty looking, guess what? Now you have to come out of that hole and prove yourself that you are not that person. Where if you were squared away, looking good, you go into whatever, a board meeting or to the gym, whatever it is, you're like, okay, this guy's squared away. Now you're in the positive. Like you are already where you need to be. Now it's on your actions.
All right. Hey guys, Keith and Eddie here with UNAFRAID. New Year's, people are talking about fitness, workouts, diet, things like that. We were going to get this done last week while people have this on their mind, didn't get it done. So here we are. And hopefully you've made it this far into the year, keeping your fitness goals. If not, maybe something we say here will inspire you. And the whole idea behind this podcast was, you see a lot of this Navy SEAL fitness and Green Beret fitness and world-class athlete, whatever. And that's great. And that can be inspiring for a lot of people. And you can certainly learn from it. But a lot of folks can't necessarily identify, right, with the Eddies of the world, the 0.1% humans. I'm not that guy, right? So I'm kind of a normal guy. So we're going to talk about our individual sort of fitness journeys. Two guys the same age, very similar interests, but totally divergent career paths, different workout styles and everything else. This is what might work for you. This is what might work for me. Maybe you can pick something from both of us that works for you. Neither of us are doctors, medical professionals, personal trainers, any of that stuff. So if you take this as medical advice, you're not very smart. Talk to those folks before you start a workout. That really is important. But that said, I've never met a doctor who told somebody not to work out. So anything you want to add just right out of the gate?
Yeah. Big thing to concentrate on here, regardless of whatever it is, it comes down to really two things: discipline and work. You've got to have those two things if you're going to, if it's diet, fitness, whatever your workout routine is, you've got to have that consistency and you've got to put in that work. And a lot of people, I'm sure we'll hit this again, is like, I'm just going to diet, and they do great for a week. And it's a lot of those times that it's too strenuous. Sometimes you got to ease yourself in. Sometimes you can. There's individuals that can jump right in, but it comes down to that work and discipline every time. And if those two things are not there, I'm sorry, you lost. And,
yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there.
It's like, to me, it's like raising a kid or training a dog. There's got to be repetition. There's got to be, there are no easy buttons. There's no shortcut. Yeah. And
it'd be nice if there was. Oh my God. Wouldn't that be so nice?
I'd be pressing it right now
all the time.
Yeah. And a lot of folks who come from their baseline fitness level is essentially zero. They do nothing of any physical activity whatsoever. And they go, oh, I want to look like X. And they go straight into some super aggressive workout routine, or they go to some trainer who just beats the crap out of them. And then they're so sore, so beat up that they can't continue it. That's not the path to success. This isn't Hell Week. Go for a walk, do things that are within your ability, build slowly, and you're more likely to stick with it. You're less likely to get injured. It's just, don't bite off more than you could chew. You'll get there, but it's going to take time.
Gotcha. For this podcast, just so everyone knows, Keith came up with some really good questions. So we're going to be referring to these. I've got my little iPad here because this is good stuff. And a lot of these questions were pulled from media, from our YouTube channel, because we did a Bud segment podcast, I think back in, was it chapter 2 or Bravo or something like that? Mm-hmm. A lot of questions came from that. So that's where these came from. And I think a couple of them we had questions, or we wanted to talk about it because we kind of take care of take different things based off of life, surgeries, medical conditions, and we want to throw that into the mix.
Yeah, and this kind of got teed up by our conversation with Eric Frohart,
Yeah.
a couple episodes
Yep.
ago. Very,
Yep.
very fitness oriented guy. I've learned a
Love you,
lot from him.
Fro. Love
Love you,
you.
Fro. So this is kind of the piggyback on that. So I'll start out in sort of interview format. First things first, we're going to do tail of the tape. When I was at your wedding, I met somebody who had watched some of our stuff, and she was shocked that I was not a short, chubby guy.
Yeah.
I guess the camera doesn't love me. So
what are you 6'1", 6'1"?
Yeah, 6'1", 195. Like, reasonably
and perfectly handsome,
beautiful.
Yeah, of course.
Right at 6'1", 195. Hover around that weight. Down a little bit right now, which is not a bad thing. How about you, Eddie? I know when I met you, you were like 235.
Yeah, I think I was 230 when we first met. 231-ish, 2-ish maybe. 5'10", 44 years old. And now I'm at 205.
Okay. And I'm 45.
I've dropped some weight.
When and if you've read the book Unafraid, you kind of have some insight on this, but what inspired you to work out, and when did you really start?
I guess when I first started learning about it was my dad was a pretty cut dude. I always thought he was a bit.
Still is.
Yeah, he still is. I mean, he still goes to the gym. It's just one of those things that from that aspect, he's worked into his routine, which has been perfect for him. But he was always like kind of cut up. There was always weights around, and he was always doing. I was like, so I'm like, okay, so clearly this is the way. And this kind of goes back to the parenting piece. What you bring into the house, what you do, your children are going to cling to that. So if you say, we hate these people, or we don't do that, guess what? Or we like the Cincinnati Bengals, guess what? it's gonna pick up. So like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, and I talk about this in the book, Sylvester Stallone, watching those movies, they were all jack dudes. And just a seed was planted. And I noticed that I was kind of drawn more to kids at school that were kind of bigger, were, more into the physical realm with like sports and stuff. I was like, okay, I want to do that. And maybe some of that was me searching for that identity piece. Like this is who I want to be. This is how I want people to see me. But that's where I think it started. But I started working out, like lifting. I think I was 15 years old. I was a freshman in high school. I joined the swim team. It was right before I joined the swim team. That's right. I was going to go to football. So it might've been 8th grade. I started working out because I wanted to get stronger, and it didn't matter. They were still bigger than me, but that's when I started. So I'd go to the YMCA and lift weights.
What do those workouts look like?
I'm sure the typical bench, probably pull-ups, curls. You got to do the curls.
Yeah. No squats.
No, probably no squats. Maybe some leg extensions because I can sit down and eat a cheeseburger while I'm doing it or something. But I mean, just basic stuff, whatever. I mean, I know my dad would take me to the gym and he would show me some things, but just basic stuff, basic like old school working out, like Arnold workouts, I guess you could say.
It's funny. I did not come of. Nobody in my family has any fitness whatsoever. Like nobody's ever seen. Well, it's funny. My dad now goes to the gym every single day, and I think it's more social than anything else. But like nobody in my family worked out. My mom would walk like to a crazy extent. She was always, in good shape from walking, but it's not like anybody was watching what they ate or working out or anything like that. Middle school, I started playing Pop Warner football and liked it, enjoyed the physical challenge. Like the very first practice they made us run. It was a lot different back then. I was coaching flag football last year, my son's team, and we got to the end of practice and I was kind of helping the coach so that I could get my son on that team. And we got done. He's like, all right, guys, 6 o'clock tomorrow. I was like, well, we're not going to smoke them until they puke. He's like, no, you can't do that anymore. You can't do that anymore. I was like, oh,
stress card.
Yeah. So my very first practice, I mean, we ran some laps and then we were all taking a knee and the coach was, giving us a little speech. And I was hyperventilating so badly that every single person was like ignoring the coach and just looking at me. I mean, it was so embarrassing, but I could not get my breathing under control. And I don't think I've ever been that bad off since. But instead of taking that and saying, hey, I never want to do that again, I was like, hey, these other kids weren't breathing like that. I got to get it together. So started, my buddy Sam Kelly and I started going to the Y in Stuart, Florida. And it's funny, the old building, when it was brand new, I went in there a couple months ago now, and it's like 30 years old now, they're like ready to knock it down and build a new one. Yeah. I remember when that was like state of the art. So yeah. And then, into high school, I had like the Weider weight bench. It had the one
the real close together.
Yeah. If you took the weights off one side, it would sling the bar off the
finger smasher.
Yes.
I got you.
I still have scars, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
and I had it in my
dangerous
in my back porch, like prison workouts. Did those curls, bench, incline. I started doing that, started running a little bit. I was gonna, I wanted to enlist in the Army, so I would do push-ups and sit-ups and run and lift weights and all that. Worked a ton in high school, like 40-hour days, or 40-hour weeks, as a student while school was going on. So didn't, but I would come home from work, from bussing tables in a restaurant, and I'd go for a run at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I was really motivated, which my family was like, what's wrong with this kid? We don't understand why he cares about this stuff. So, but it really kicked off for me in college. I had a teacher talk me into going to college. He's like, don't enlist, get some school, go in as an officer. You'll have a way better life, everything else. And long story short, I got there.
I love that. I've heard that so many times. Go do the officer route. It's so funny. I just encountered, there was a guy that went to my gym. He went to Buds, unfortunately didn't make it. And I was at my daughter's volleyball game, and he somehow came up because of the book and all that stuff. So he was asking questions. And he goes, do you remember this kid? I go, yeah, I remember him. I'm like, how do you do? And he's like, well, he didn't make it. And he goes, yeah, we tried to tell him to do the officer route. And I was like, And I was like, why is that? I'm like, oh, it's just better. Like, people are so not informed. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And I'm like, I actually had that conversation with him before he went. And I asked him, I was like, do you want to operate, or do you want to operate for a small amount of time and then go do logistical admin work and kind of coordinate things? And he goes, I want to operate. I'm like, okay. I would suggest you do to enlist as enlisted, not do officer. People don't get that. That's how
and this guy was a senior NCO. He was an ROTC instructor, so he knew, but I guess he just saw something different in me that he felt like that was a better path. And he was super fit. He was, he's an old guy back then. He's probably 48, but he was just jacked.
Right.
Master Sergeant Walter Schambach, and he was just like, I want to look like that guy. So I had a great, and the way he carried himself, there was a lieutenant colonel there who was a nice enough guy, but he was sloppy. His uniform was sloppy. He was overweight. And then you had this NCO who looked like he came out of a poster. And of
course you're going to grab that. That's what people understand. Like,
I don't want to be that guy. I want to be that guy.
Like, looks absolutely do matter. Like,
he might have been a terrible. He was an Air Force guy. Might have been a terrible airman or whatever. But he looked the part. He looked good. His uniform was perfect. He was in super good shape. So,
and you don't need to be jacked up. I mean, this is such a good learning point. Is we kind of we talk about that in the back of the book. Is like you are judged on your appearance, regardless. So if you're looking sloppy and you're nasty looking, guess what? Now you have to come out of that hole and prove yourself that you are not that person. Where if you were squared away, looking good, and you go into whatever, a board meeting or to the gym, whatever it is, you're like, okay, this guy's squared away. Now you're in the positive. Like, you are already where you need to be. Now it's on your actions. People don't get that. They look like slobs half the time. Doesn't mean they're turds. You're just not helping your case.
They have to prove otherwise. Well, if you look good and you dress the part and keep your mouth shut, everybody will assume that you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
If you come in looking like a slob, it's the opposite. Now you have to prove your worthiness.
You're in the negative, and you don't want to be in the negative.
So got up to school, and my freshman year, I went to the only school that let me in, and it was in the middle of nowhere, and there was really nothing to do. And I was, there in ROTC trying to win an ROTC scholarship. So was doing PT in the morning. It was a really hilly campus. I would go run the hills later again, and then I'd go into the student gym and just jack weights. I had this Joe Weider workout plan. Somebody had photocopied me, and it was like so clearly for somebody on steroids. but I didn't know that. I'm 18, 19 years old. So I just did everything it said. And I'd be in the gym for
4 hernias 2 months in.
Yeah, it was like 3 hours. It was like so many reps. And I got a funny story on that. It was 1995. People didn't carry water bottles around. So you'd go do your set or whatever, and there's a water fountain out in the hallway. You're at that age, you're sizing people up.
Oh, God, yeah.
And there's this guy in front of me, kind of a thin guy, had a shirt cut way down, and he's at the water fountain. And I just had this kind of subconscious thought, like, I could take that guy. Turned around, it was Roy Jones Jr. at the height of his career.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's from Pensacola. Crazy. He's from Pensacola, Florida. He was in there playing basketball. And I was just like, that was like one of those life-changing moments of like, never judge, but I mean, from the back, this guy was a pound for pound toughest dude in the whole world.
Exactly.
And my stupid 18-year-old butt thinks he can take him. So
slice of humble pie, baby. Take it when you can get it, man.
Yeah. And he was so nice. So when I came home, like for Thanksgiving, people were like, wow, what happened to you? I mean, I dropped some baby fat. I probably put on 15 pounds. I mean, and I loved that feeling. I loved the way people treated me. I loved, girls all of a sudden started paying more attention. So yeah, I mean, I had done some stuff earlier, but really freshman year in college is when I kicked it off and got serious about lifting. And I was doing so much running, doing PT in the mornings that I had trouble. I could never break like 185. I couldn't put a lot of weight on. But now I'd kill for the body fat I had in those days, but I wanted to be bigger.
Of course.
It was also those were the days. I mean, it was the 90s.
Yep.
Flex magazine and all these 320 pound steroid freaks with 32-inch waists.
The days now seem to be look like anything but a man. It's kind of crazy.
That's right.
I'll go with old school.
Yeah,
old school all day long.
Sit down to pee.
Yeah, no thanks. We don't do that.
So for you joined the Marines. So there's obviously at the same time period I'm talking about, you're an enlisted Marine now.
Yep.
You got PT, you got certain standards you have to meet, but then were you lifting on your own?
I was. So I guess when I started in high school, after I started lifting, I would do the swim team. So I would do swim workouts, pool, dry lands with medicine balls. We would hit the weights once in a while. I'd say weights probably 2 or 3 times a week after our swim workouts. And then when I was going to go to the Marines, I started running more, which I can't stand running. I hated running back then, hate it now. Actually, I won't do it now unless I'm being chased like a bear. And honestly, I'd probably turn around and see what my chances are because I have to breathe too hard. I'm kidding on that, by the way. After the Marines, it was kind of like, all right, it was kind of like we run. It was like, I kind of realized like, hey, these guys are so conventional. They have no idea what they're doing. Like, this is like somebody like, hey, let's go work out. Okay, let's go for a run. Hey, you lead the workout today. What are we gonna do? Well, let's go do a run. Like, can we think of anything other than running? Because I feel in combat, running is not a huge thing. Because not once in combat, the only time I think I ran was running to a helicopter or running off of a helicopter for maybe 50 yards. So I don't know where the running thing came in, but that's what we do. So push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and then I started incorporating lifting once I was in the Marines. That's when it really was like, okay, this is it, is because there was a buddy, Kirk Cousy, I'll never forget. He was just a jacked dude. He was a big Korean boy. Like, dude, he was just jacked. And I was like, okay, I want to be like this. Because I noticed like people paid respect to him just based off of the size. And like, I'm an impressionable 19-year-old. I'm like, dude, that's what I want. So I started lifting hard. So I started lifting hard with my buddy Dan Woods. And we just started jacking steel. We buy like the Harbinger wristbands. We get like the chalk. We got the bag at the hand towel. The Muscle Tech supplements. Back then, on base, they carried a thing called Ultimate Orange, which they eventually took it off because people were getting heart attacks. But dude, you took a scoop of that stuff, man.
It was I think it was ephedrine.
It was
before they took it off the market. Yeah,
it was something.
But heart can explode. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised it didn't. But and we would jack steel for maybe 2 hours. Sometimes we'd go twice a day. It was awesome. But that's when it got. And that's where it became, that's my lifestyle. From then on, I always worked out. The only time I did not lift weights is when I was injured or at buds. That's the only time. And to be honest with you, the first 2 weeks of buds, I still tried to go to the gym. And I realized I kind of had come to Jesus moment, I guess you could say, is this is not smart. I'm going to injure myself because I was so tired and I was trying to do more strenuous stuff and I could just feel it in my body. So I was like, crap. All right, no more lifting weights. So I didn't lift during buds, but since that has been a staple, and now as we go through this, I'll, divvy it up. But that it's always been like that, man. Is just
So,
the weights.
backing up a tad, what did you weigh when you graduated high school? When you showed up at Paris Island?
175, 180, maybe.
Okay. And then how about coming out of the Marine Corps?
Lower than that because I had a little chunk going on. So maybe, God, I wish I would have paid attention. I didn't even care about this stuff back then. I'd say I probably lost about 5 to 10 pounds and trimmed up a little bit.
Okay.
So whatever. I was not heavy at all.
Right. So when
Yeah,
you
I was a skinny guy.
when you made the decision you were going to go to the Navy and try to go to Buds, I'm assuming you started kind of getting yourself prepared physically. What did those workouts look like?
So I would still do the weights. I was like, I'm going to keep my size. And my weight training went from like, I want to be as strong as possible to, hey, this is kind of turned into my therapy. This is kind of like my happy time, putting in my whatever the headphones were with the wire. Yeah, the Walkman. And like just getting jacked up with a lifting buddy or by myself. And I was just
because by now you're married with a kid.
Yeah, so it's married with a kid at this time. So that was like my go away time, and it was respected. Like I kind of needed it. It was my therapy, to be honest with you, and I kind of stuck with that. But when I learned I was going to go to the Navy, switch over from the Marines, I started doing a lot of swimming. And I would go to the pool during lunch because that's when there was like open swim. I think it was like from 1100 to 1300 or 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I would go swim. I would do like a 500 warm up, and then I would throw on my cami bottoms, and I would do another 500, and then I would throw on my top with my bottoms, and then do another 500, and then I would take both those off and then do another 500. And sometimes I would make it longer. Sometimes I would do sprints. Sometimes I would do underwaters, but I would go swim. I would do that at least 3 or 4 times a week leading up to, and I was just getting my water, comfortability back from what I had in high school. Because I swam two times. I would go into high school early, like we were there at 4:30, I think. I would do a practice, go to school, then afterwards you have practice again because because it's no impact. You can't. You're not going to get hurt really.
So obviously, your competitive swimming background had a huge effect on your preparedness.
It was awesome. Yeah. It was so cool.
You knew how to do those workouts.
I knew how to do those workouts. Absolutely. It definitely was it saved me for sure. I would say.
So I know you've said that basically it doesn't matter how fit you are when you show up to Buds because they're going to smoke you no matter what your level is. But that aside, relative to yourself, relative to the other students, you feel like you were prepared physically?
100%. I was good to go. The only thing that could, as it always been the story of my life, is just running. I was in the back of the pack. I'd say probably 75% of the runs, I would be middle of the pack, stayed up with them, no issues, but there'd be that 25% where I would fall back. And sometimes I would not mind falling back and just getting beat down by push-ups, 8-count bodybuilders or whatever they want you to do. I'd rather do that than run. Honestly, I'd rather take a baseball bat to my back.
The punishment was worth it.
It's worth it. It was not punishment. That was punishment.
How bad was the 14 miler?
That was horrible. That was I have to do this. That's all there is to it. Let's go.
If I do this, I'll never do it again as long as I live.
And I have not and will not.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, it wasn't on the sand. It wasn't with boots. You actually got to wear gym shoes or running shoes with like shorts and a t-shirt, and it was long, and your instructors are doing it with you. A couple of them were. And it was just, honestly, it was really cool to see like, hey, you can do this. It was another one of those mental toughness challenges. They're like, all right, cool, got this one. Like, okay, I know I can do this if I need to. So it was challenging. I'm not gonna say it was not challenging, but at the same time, it was kind of cool. Like, dude, I'm at mile 10. I've only got 4 more. But this is crazy. This is so cool. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't love to run, but I've done quite a bit of it. And for several years, I didn't run at all. And maybe about a year or so ago, I started running just like one day a week. I'd go run for 30 minutes. And I realized I'd missed that mental challenge because the first step, I want to quit. I hate running. I don't want to do this. It's so uncomfortable. It's so boring. And then by the end, you feel so great because you fought through it and you did something. And I think those little bitty battles are good for you.
100%.
I was doing just earlier today. I was with Brandon and I was doing push presses and I was like smiling. He's like, I was like, I could do this all day long. It's my favorite. This is not punishment at all. Like, I love this.
He's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then he changes it up on you.
All right, here's a medicine ball. Go do some, some front squats. So
tell Brandon I said what's up, by the way.
I will.
I love that guy. He's a good dude.
We'll talk about him in a little bit. So we talk in the book about SQT, and that's when you really got back into the weights and put your size back on.
Yeah. I know I graduated buds weighing 193.
Yeah.
And I know that for a fact. So I weighed myself because I'm like, all right, let's see what we can do here. And then I started hitting the weights hard. After we would go to SQT, I remember being done with our dives, and my buddy Joe, who's in the book as well, we'd go over and we'd go lift weights. Like, we were exhausted and we would just push each other. That accountability, just like that iron sharpens iron. And we would knock out some really good workouts. For one, we're sucking down O2 on our rigs. So you got that in your system and you're taking it over you could tell a difference. It was actually pretty cool. And after SQT and jump school, which I continued to lift there, I checked into team 2. I was 225. So I went up a little bit.
Right. I love that visual of you in your, medium-sized camis.
Oh, dude, it was like a wetsuit.
Yeah.
Like, we need to get you new camis. I'm like, yeah, probably.
By the way, I had this thought the other day, and I'm going to mention it now because I keep forgetting to tell you this, but Joe is like your guardian angel. There's so many points in your life where that guy steered you in the right direction.
Oh my God. Yeah.
He's just such a solid dude. And I was so glad to get to hang out with him.
Dude, it's so funny. I remember throughout buds, he'd always be like, hey, my grandma was praying for us. And at that time I was like, so I'd be like, oh, that's cool. But in my head, I was like, what is that? Okay, great. Thanks. That's nice of you. Looking back now, I'm like, dude, like, thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for caring.
Yeah. It's like, it's a big deal, man.
So how about now you're team 2, you're starting to deploy. What do those workouts look like when you're overseas? And I know you did a Strong First article about this, which is one of the things that's inspired this discussion. So people want to read more about that, then go to strongfirst.com and look for your article. But just tell us, what do those look like?
What's so cool about that article is you wrote that article.
Well,
you helped the 5th grader write.
Right.
Again.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, dude, at SEAL Team 2, it was the same thing. Like, let's go for a run. Like, there was like, everyone just wanted to run or do like a run, swim, run, or a swim, run, swim, or a swim, swim, run, run, swim, swim, run. It's like, dude, can we get out of this like mentality of we have to run? But I would still lift, and I would do runs only if it was mandatory. I would go lift actually with Joe because we were team 2 together. But deployments, it would depend. First thing when we got to our little FOB, our forward operating base, or wherever we were staying, is after we were allowed to, like, we got the essentials, like guns out, all that stuff. It was like, okay, where is the gym? And usually we're finding that out as we're unloading. Okay, where's the gym? How far away? How does it look? You got pictures. Like, we're getting, the intel. So as soon as we could, we'd go find that gym. We would pretty much recon the area, see like what it has, what it doesn't have. And then if it didn't have certain things, we would try to find other baby gyms and see if we could acquire things for a certain gym. But I think just about everywhere I went, there was weights. So weights were still the main thing. But I'll tell you what, man, when you bring in so many different people from different regions, different military bases, it's kind of cool. You get to see a lot of different techniques and styles and workout routines, and just watching other people and seeing what they're doing. And instead of making fun of them, which, the human nature seems to be for some reason, it's like, hey, what are those guys doing? And what does that do for them? And I remember, like, we would go and be like, hey, where'd you get this? And they would be like, oh, this is, CrossFit, or this is whatever it is. And we would start, I remember finding out some of these, I'm like, dude, I'm going to incorporate that in here. And it would just be little things, but you're just kind of tweaking your workouts.
Yeah, that was my question. Were you starting to see like the CrossFit functional kind of stuff showing up in those days? That's about the time I first heard about it.
It might have been, I don't know if it was CrossFit, but it was more functional style, workouts. I mean, really cool stuff. And I'd be lying to you if I was like, okay, douchers, like, what are we doing here? This is
Right.
a weight room. Quit
Quit
your
spasming
grunting.
on the pull-up
Yes,
bar.
please stop. So yeah, but I mean, honestly, I picked up so, especially now, oh my gosh, like my workouts are 180, totally different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, is that when CrossFit came out? I don't really know the exact
I
date.
don't know. I know the first time I heard about it was like maybe 03. Yeah, one of the guys brought me a DVD, and it was like just a video of people doing workouts. There was no YouTube then, and I don't know why, And then I'm like, this doesn't look so bad, and I started trying those workouts, and I didn't know to scale. So I'm trying to do the same weights that these guys on the video are doing, and just destroying myself. So quickly gain respect for that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So now you're on a deployment, and you find out you've got a couple weeks before you're going to go to selection for your dream job. What shift, you got to shift gears, you got to prepare for that. What's that look like?
That was a mindset, like, okay, wow, I can't push this back. That's all I get is. So all I would do is I tapered down the lifting a little bit, and I started running. And I think I stopped going to the weight room. I think like 2 days out of the week, I dropped them and just started doing run workouts. And that's it. I just knew, like, hey man, you got to go do this. That's it. That's all there is to it. I was still, exactly. I'm like, all right, this is like, that's it. That's how that works. And I'm like, all right, that's what we got to do. And that's what we'll do. And that's what I did.
So you obviously make it through the testing phase. You get to what we call S&T in the book. Talk to us about the physical requirements. Like what does PT look like for those 6 months?
When you get to the tier 1 unit, it is a little different than like SEAL Team 2 or 4 or 8 or whatever it is. From my experiences, maybe things have changed, but things were more organized. Like, hey, we're meeting out as a platoon. We're going to go do this, which is cool because it builds that camaraderie. I do like that aspect of it, but it just sucks when it's the same crap all the time because people it's easy, right? When you get over there, it's on after you do S&T. There is a lot of running.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the physical requirements while you're there first.
A lot of running. So you'd have to do your thing. You have to do your push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, a swim and a run to even get in there with it. It's all timed or counted or whatever. And I think only a couple guys got dropped on that one. Actually, that's not true. Dozens got dropped because the swim took out a lot of people. It was like a salmon run that we described, but it was took out a lot of people. But after that, you do. I remember we had like 2 weeks. It was all CrossFit. They would have certified people come in and teach you about CrossFit. And then we did, I think Mark Twight, he came in for a week. We did his. So they brought in all these, and then they brought in some football coaches to do that kind of stuff. So we had all these different, I guess you could say, experts in whatever workout they do. And that was like awesome. That was like, okay, this is so cool. And so I got to learn about all that stuff there. I mean, it was like legitimate, like it was regimented. It was good stuff. But still like went back to my lifting because that's just like my happy time, man. But they do teach you pretty much about everything, especially when you're deployed. You might only have a kettlebell or a sandbag, and you got to kind of figure it out to stay in shape because you still need to be operational ready. You need to keep your sanity. That's probably the biggest piece. So you have those tools, and they make sure that they were actually very straightforward. That was in the front burner for all this stuff, is making sure you knew what you were doing. But when you get to the teams after the selection piece and you make it through, it's big boy rules. It's on your own. Like there was guys going to do fighting, and that was another thing that we would have to do is fighting. for my first, I think it was a year and a half with mandatory newer guys. Like if you just got there, you had to do fighting. We call it a fight club. You have to do it every morning. And you can go do whatever workouts you want in the afternoon or like immediately after. So it'd be like jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, combative. So you're stuff with your gear and your gun, and then boxing. It was all like throughout the week. And but after that, once you've been there for a while, it's on you. Like you do what you want to go lift, you go lift. You want to go to the rock climbing wall, that's what you do. You want to go run, go run. You want to go swim, go swim. If you want to go do a 20-mile hike, go. It's on you. So of course I go lift. And I would do jujitsu once in a while. If somebody like, held a gun to my head and said, "Hey, come with me, let's go." But usually it was just lifting.
Were there ever any, once a year PT tests or anything like that you had to do to? No, you're
Nope.
Totally big boy rules.
The mission is overseas, especially when there was all these wars going on. No one cared about anything. All that you're supposed to, according to Navy rules and regulations, but it did. You can take your PT test and kind of shove it. You know what I mean? It's like I don't need, like I'm going over getting shot at and taking it to the enemy. I don't need your PT test. It doesn't do anything for me.
Well, at this point, they've got probably millions of dollars invested.
They're not going to do anything.
They're going to not let you
knew
deploy.
That.
Yeah, they're going to not let you deploy because you didn't run fast enough in the PT test. I mean,
you got like a bunch of rogue dudes who are like, "Sorry, dude, you ain't going to do anything."
Ain't happening.
But it was good. They respected that. They left us alone. And if somebody did, which because it rarely hit me, but it would happen. Somebody was kind of getting out of shape, like, "Hey, dude, like fix it," and they would fix it. That's it. That's it.
The kind of guys that are going to make it there are going to tune it up quick. I mean, because we go through problems at home, or injuries. That's usually the biggest one. You get injuries, you're sitting on the couch for 3 months, and I mean, some of these injuries, like, hey, your hip just got blown out, or your knee just popped. I mean, it's totally out, or a compound fracture, or a gunshot, like whatever these things are. It takes time to heal, and you're not operating. Depression sets in. You're an eater or not an eater. Do you stress eat? Do you not? Right.
So all those things kind of came into play, but they would fix it. I mean, I can't recall of any time where someone didn't fix it.
What were your injuries? I know you got a lot.
Oh boy, buddy. I guess during my time, like operating, my lower back and knees and shoulders were the biggest thing. I had a couple surgeries while operating. I would do the cortisone shots. I did one cortisone shot in this shoulder, and it held me down for 10 years. Like I was good for 10 years. After that 10 years, the pain kind of took over and it was all tore up. I had to get a couple anchors in there. My foot from mule kicking doors, I started getting ganglion cysts grow on them from just all the impact of kicking things. But those are my biggest one. And then like multiple hernias.
Were most of yours sort of cumulative, like wear and tear injuries, or were they like acute, you fell off a building or whatever?
Yeah, most were wear and tear. I can't recall. My knee was, I think my right knee was the only one. I think I twisted it on an op. My leg got stuck between two rocks and I fell over at the same time, and I kind of jarred it a little bit. It popped back in. So I mean, him and I still play games with it to this day. But that's really, everything else has been wear and tear.
Yeah.
Which is probably, I'd rather it be like, ouch, fix it and move on. Now it's like, dude, like my shoulders, there's no ball.
New joints.
It's just a stick.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what they said. When I was 37, they wanted to do both my shoulders and both my knees and replace them all. And I said no. I was like, dude, I'm 37 years old.
Push that off as long as you can, I guess.
Yeah,
the implants get better, the surgical techniques get better.
Yeah.
I mean, just wait as long as you can, in my opinion. Again, I know zero about medicine, but
you've had some injuries. What about you? Surgeries?
No surgeries, which is why I refuses to try to learn to ski at age 45. And I'm like, okay, if there's like an orthopedic surgeon waiting at the end of the event, I don't need to engage in that activity. Because so far I've avoided the knife. I've had a bulging disc from trying to take internet CrossFit workouts and going and doing them at a YMCA with zero coaching or knowledge of scale or anything like that. So that plagued me for a long time and is better now. I'm a huge fan of physical therapy. So I've had a torn labrum, a bulging disc, some other stuff. And every time I've done PT, usually not on doctor's orders, just knew a PT that gave me some exercises or something like that. And through time, those things have all worked themselves out to where I never had to get cut on. So I'm hoping to.
What was the what were the injuries, like something happened, like it was trauma, or was it
The back was doing thrusters. It was like high reps of 135 thrusters.
should we be airing this out for the world? I feel like we should.
It was, and I went down and I heard my form was bad. I mean, it wasn't CrossFit's fault. It was my fault. But I heard an audible pop, and I somehow got it back up, racked it, and I just took the weights off, went home, and like the next day, I was flying out to Montana to hunt antelope with Darren Lasort, and I was just lying on my back on this prairie, staring at the sky, just couldn't move, just couldn't, it helped me up, and brutal. So fought that for a while, and then met this physical therapist, and he sat there. A doctor would say, "Oh, we're going to cut, or we're going to give you a pill, or we're going to do whatever." No dig on doctors. That's the way they're trained, and that's how they get reimbursed.
Yeah, sometimes there's a time and place. For sure.
Yeah. So this guy took out a whiteboard, sat me down, and explained the mechanics of what was going on in my body and how to fix it. And these are the exercises you're going to do to push it back. And I've continued to do those exercises ever since. And it'll flare up now and then if I'm doing some deadlifts or something, but it's a lot better.
What about the weather? The cold weather, does that affect it?
No.
No.
Yeah. Maybe like the shoulder and the knee a little bit.
Yeah, mine get weather. My shoulders and knees both get. Maybe it's more of a joint thing.
Yeah, my very first pads practice ever in football, 7th grade. Right, shouldn't be serious, but the coach was like Gunnery Sergeant. he was like Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in Full Metal Jacket.
Oh yes,
and little short dude. And it's funny. I look back now, and I would have said he was 45 years old, and my brother still knows him, runs into him. He was like 28 at the time. I mean, he was a young guy,
That's so funny.
So I'd never played football before. Nobody ever told me how to do this. So he has the blue arm shield, and I'm supposed to hit him. And I came in too high, and he's like, "You're too high," and he clubs me with this thing. I go flying through the air like and plant one foot down and tweak my knee. And that was 1991, and it still hurts. Like if I go on a longer run or anything like that, it's like the IT band like side area. So so that stuff can last a long time. That's one where probably should have got it fixed 35 years ago and moved on.
Did you do the classic? I'll just try to act like this doesn't hurt, so I don't look like a fool.
Well, yeah, and then if my dad was a construction guy, like tough dude. If I go home and tell him my knee hurts, suck it up. It's not like he's rushing me off to the orthopedic surgeon. So there weren't a lot of options anyway. It was go home and suck it up.
Right. So you do. I know you're a big hunter. We've talked about that on some podcasts. You were explaining to me like, hey, I've got you. You were actually explaining this to me. I'm like, I think you're actually talking to me, and I don't think I was giving you full attention. And then you said something. I was like, okay, wait, time out. What'd you say? So you work out for these hunts that you do over in Africa or other places. I'm like, okay, what are these hunts? So like, walk us through that if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I guess it's the same way you would approach a deployment or something like that, right? You've got the best part of a big hunting trip is the thinking about it and planning for it and picking out the gear and getting ready for it, right? That's the anticipation is the best part. And Africa's not tough because it's pretty flat. There's just a lot of walking, not that strenuous if you're in decent shape. But Western US or Asia, like I was going to Tajikistan late last year until the flight got canceled. I mean, now you're talking some real altitude and some real rough terrain. And if you're just going to show up there, you're going to fail, and it's going to beat the crap out of you, and you're not going to have a good time. I mean, you're paying good money to do this. You don't want to not be successful because you didn't put in the time to prepare. And you don't want it to suck more than it needs to. I mean, there's times that it's going to. And what I find interesting about those scenarios, and not to, look, I've never been to Marine boot camp, never been to Buzz, never done any of these things, but I have been in some very, very challenging situations on a hunt where you're like on the side of a mountain, it's snowing, you're slipping, you're tired. And the difference is there's no quit button. You can't go, okay, I'm out. you have to get yourself out of that situation.
Yeah.
I guess you could like call in a helicopter, but that's going to get expensive. So this is a whole different mindset of having to, kind of save yourself. So don't get yourself in a situation that you can't get yourself out of because nobody's coming. So I started doing different workouts to prepare. I tried just about everything. I was doing the Jim Jones stuff. I was doing I think it's called Mountain Athlete.
Jim Jones, Mark Twight, Jim Jones. Okay, sorry, I was looking for that word. Okay,
and he's of course he was this really successful alpine climber, so he had a lot of conditioning stuff built in there. I did a few different things and with varying success, but my best success came. So fast forward a little bit, I'm now in my mid 30s, and we have 3 kids in a very short period of time. So we're now in survival mode. For the first time in my life, I'm not lifting, or adult life, I'm not lifting weights. We're pushing strollers up and down the street with three babies in diapers, and kind of was getting a little bit on the backside of that to where I could do some trips again. And I was going to Alaska to hunt sheep, and sheep live in very steep, high terrain. Those are physically challenging hunts. And Alaska, the weather is extremely challenging, or can be. My experience, it was. And I had to get ready for it. And I didn't have a lot of time on my hands. And so I reached out to Fro, and he put me on this workout that at the time was like classified, confidential, all this stuff. Now it's in this Bible book, The Quick and the Dead. It's one of the workouts in there. And it's very much a minimalist workout. And it's basically push-ups and kettlebell swings. And a lot of them. And it's a very,
we did this.
And he threw in like some Turkish get-ups and a couple other things for me to do. And I think it's really designed to do with something else like jujitsu, or it's not supposed to be your own. Right. I say this, I didn't design it. I don't think it's supposed to be your only workout, but I did that. And he had me also doing a lot of walking, and then a lot of basically rucking on the weekends, like 2 or 3 hour extended with pack and my hunting boots and all that kind of stuff. And I went into that trip, and I ended up getting hurt, but that was no fault of the workout. That was just circumstance. But I was the most physically prepared I'd ever been. And I was older, and it was tougher, and the loads were heavier, and everything else. It should have been the hardest hunt I was ever on. And I rocked it. And I don't understand the science of why. And I think a lot of it was the time under ruck that I spent. Right. But then also the movements that he had me doing gave me the strength and core strength and all those kind of things I needed. And it was just, it was an eye opener to me that you don't have to be like throwing up to be getting in shape, right? There's not, everything doesn't have to be at a level 9. So I basically continued to do that workout for several years. And would throw in runs or hikes and things like that if I had a trip coming up. But that became my go-to. I'm doing something a little different now. We can talk about that. But yeah, it's a real thing to prepare for this thing, especially as you get older. I mean, I did my first real mountain hunt. I was like 23, 24, and you can get away with a lot at that age, right? And I had bad boots and bad gear and didn't know what I was doing. But now I'm 45. You got to be prepared for something like that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you got to be smarter. You got to be smarter when you work out.
And part of my motivation for staying in some type of shape is I love to do that stuff. And I don't want me not working out or whatever being the limitation on doing something that I enjoy doing, or that maybe I want to expose my kids to, or something like that. So, yeah, it's, it's like anything. People prepare for a big bike race or a marathon or something like that, but you got to put your time in, and tougher hunts are no different.
Yeah. I'm sure. I remember I kind of walked through, because that was the tail end, I believe, when we were kind of finishing up the book, or we were waiting for the approval from DOD. And I remember you telling about it, because we were still talking like a couple schoolgirls, which is cool. Right. And you were telling me about, like, dude, you're like, for real. He's like, dude, I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm like, that makes sense. That's so freaking cool.
Yeah. I mean, I was basically going to the Afghan border. So, I mean, it was like
pretty much
the same terrain you were operating in.
Because we were we were talking about sat phones. Like, hey, bro, do we have a backup plan? Like, well, let's do an assessment on this. Are you good to go? Like, let's watch you.
My favorite line from that, and we've never said this publicly, but I was talking to you about, security plans and things like that and what to do. And I said, well, we're gonna have vehicles and we're gonna have long guns. Like we've got some capability to shoot at pretty far distances. We got some pretty good shooters with great equipment. And you're like, no, you're gonna want to get off the X. And then you're like, get a kill, but then get off the X.
Yes, you got to get that kill, then get the heck out of there.
If here's your chance, and that still makes me smile. So
it's true. Don't stay and play, man.
No. So you've gotten really into fighting. That's kind of your thing now. Tell me about that.
Yeah, minus the last probably 6 weeks, dude. Just with the step when the Sean Ryan show came out, like with store and engagements, that's been kind of picked up. So I've been slacking, to be honest. But I was for a couple of years, and I'll start again back next week. Yeah, I got into, so I found out I was a diabetic. I think it was 2.5, 3 years ago. And because I was losing my vision, I was actually with a client over in Africa for a 3-week trip. We were hitting 5 different countries. And I'm like, man, I feel weird. This is weird. I was drinking tons of water, which actually happened before the trip. And I was getting up to pee probably 5 to 10 times a night. I'm like, this is not right. So I told my now wife, and she's like, you got to go get your blood checked. I'm like, I have got to go on this trip. I'll do it when I get back. So stupid. So I go to the trip. Thankfully, nothing happens besides the misery of it. And the constant peeing and all that stuff. And I get back and I go get my blood work done. My blood sugars are at 500, which normal's I think 80 to 120. So they hit me up with some insulin, and I get diagnosed as being a diabetic type 2. So they put me on metformin, and I didn't know. I was like, dude, that's for people that are overweight. I had no clue that was even possible for me to have that. But it deals with your blood. And I mean, you know me, dude, I'm a sweets dude. I was probably drinking too much back then. I would just indulge. I'd indulge. I'm like, I know I'm going to go work out tomorrow. I know I'm going to go work out. All right, I'll add 20 minutes of cardio. It just wouldn't. I would just make sure I cover out on the outside, but inside I was just getting tore up. And I was like, crap. So once that's when I was at 230. And then I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. So I'm trying new diets. I tried the vegan diet because I heard it'll get you off the medicine. Because I don't want to fall into the pharmacy tentacle web of, hey, take this medication, you'll be good, right? It takes care of this problem, yet this one stems up. Now take this medication. Then we just go back and forth. And before you know it, I'm taking 10 medications. So I was like, I'll try the vegan thing. And I did 3 months, no cheat days, no nothing. And I lost a lot of weight, dude. I mean, I had veins on veins. I had no fat. My wife was like, dude, will you please put some meat back on? Cause I was looking like Brad Pitt from Fight Club, dude. Just chiseled up. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I haven't seen my abs since I was in high school. So this works. But I was like, man, I can't, and I just couldn't figure it out. So I got off the vegan because my energy levels dropped too much. My blood sugars were still in the 200 range, which is not good, long period of time. So I just started playing with different diets, and I realized that being a diabetic, you actually like quinoa for me is not that bad, but it could be detrimental for someone else. Oatmeal is detrimental for me, which I love oatmeal. But oh, just eat complex carbs, you'll be fine. And that's actually not true. What I found. So I had to play with different breads and keto stuff. Then I started went to the keto. Then I'm like, dude, I'm eating cancer now. I'm not eating my carbs. So now I'm eating more chemicals, and it's going to start something else. It's probably more detrimental than what I'm dealing with over here. But for weight wise and physique wise, keto, it was good to go, but I don't think it's healthy at all. With added stuff, natural foods are healthy foods. That's what God created. That's what we should be eating. That's what I believe. But after a while, I started losing so much weight, and I went from 230 actually, and then I got hit with COVID, and I lost probably 10 to 13 pounds. I was at 187 at one point with the vegan thing, the COVID. I mean, I looked like I was dying. And some people be like, 187, that's but dude, for me, it was the guy's dying, right? And so I was like, I went back to the doctor. Finally put weight on. I was like at 190, 200. Then I started jujitsu, going to do some competitions. But then I started getting on the insulin because usually with a diabetic, when your blood sugars rise, your pancreas insulin, it usually raises your insulin in your body. Well, mine stayed normal, so I wasn't get the insulin response that I should have. So they put me on response, which was making me not put on weight because you need that insulin to deliver sugars, good sugars, to your muscles. So you need a mailman to carry it over to your muscles, which I didn't have. So I got on that and I finally started putting on weight. But I learned that like through my fight training, because I started adding that in, is me getting that cardio would drop my blood sugar so much. So I became addicted because it made me feel so good. So I was just like, I started with boxing, did that for about 6 months. I was like, I need to add some kicks here. So I got a coach and did the Muay Thai thing and still doing boxing. And then he's like, hey, we got to do some ground stuff. So I started jujitsu. So I was doing like 2 days a week. I was doing Muay Thai at least once or twice. I would do boxing at least once. And I was trying to do jujitsu 2 times. And then my joints started hurting really bad, so I had to change it. It was usually coming from the jiu-jitsu. So I would do privates to get the technique so I could learn it and to just learn how to not muscle everything, because that's just kind of Eddie's way, and kind of really respect the technique. And I mean, it's been a process, but now it's, if I've got my good week and I'm not like I'm just dealing with the craziness of the book and all that stuff. And my knee popped out doing jujitsu about 6 weeks ago. And so now I gotta like brace everything. And but I'll do jujitsu once or twice a week. I'll do some kind of striking. I usually spar with my coach. And then I still do my weights. Sometimes I do the heavy bag. It just kind of depends what I feel, but I'm always doing something. So I always try to do at least one combat sports a week. And I have not, I'll be honest, I've not been doing that the last 6 weeks, just with the craze of the new lifestyle that's kind of developing with Unafraid. But that changes next week. But it's cool, dude. I do my privates. I get the most out of the privates, and it's easiest on my body. And that's kind of the thing, is like you got to do what's good for you, right? It's not what, oh, you should do this. You should know, you should do what is good for your body. You still should push yourself smartly. And I think we miss out a lot.
Yeah, I did. I flirted with it was an MMA gym. This is a long time ago. That was like 15 years ago, and newly married, no kids, and I'm 30, whatever, the early 30s, and started showing up at this MMA gym because I loved watching the UFC, and I'd always wanted to box, but I was just never exposed to a way to get there. And my great grandfather was actually supposedly the amateur boxing heavyweight champion of North America, like in the 1930s or something like that. So maybe there's something in my in my genes, but wanted to do that. And I show up and couldn't afford private lessons. So I was in these group classes, and like one of the guys in the class ended up on the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, there's some tough dudes on there in there. And a lot of these guys are 19, 20 years old. It was right by Florida State University in Tallahassee. So guys who had enlisted, gone overseas as, enlisted Marines or whatever, come back and they're going to college with their GI Bill. And, they got like neck tats, and I'm wearing a suit.
They have net tax.
Yeah. Like this is like, now that's normal. This was a big deal back then, right? These are some hardcore dudes. And I got to go wear a suit the next day and walk around a state capitol. And I got like a black eye, and my shoulders jacked up. And I was like, this isn't really, I did it for about 10 months. And I came home one time and I had blood I had a white t-shirt and I had blood all over my shirt. And my sister-in-law happened to be visiting. And she's like, what happened? Oh, I got punched in the face. She's like, that's your blood? And I was like, yeah. And she looked at my wife and she's like, you gonna let him do this? She's like, he's a smart guy. He'll figure it out sooner or later how dumb this is. And I did pretty quickly after that. But so it's one of those things, if on my sort of to-do list, if I had an extra half day or if I had an extra hour here and there, private jujitsu lessons where I'm not, at the mercy of whoever walks in the gym.
Yeah.
But somebody who's a professional, I would love to get back and do that, and learn some technique, and even just like some basic escapes and things like that.
Mike Ritland, when I was on the show the last time, he were talking about that. He does privates too, because he tore a bicep, I think, because someone that just started was kind of spazzing out, like going super hard. And That's one thing cool about jiu-jitsu is you can go pretty hard, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can seriously jack somebody up. So I found the same thing too, but there's a time and a place, man. Just for like some people, like don't their joints don't get bothered by it, but dude, for some reason, man, like sparring or striking does not do that for me. It's the grappling that really just tweaks my shoulders bad, and I gotta like really watch it. It's just not worth it because then you can't go lift. Then you're grumpy because your shoulder hurts. Your kid wants you to throw the ball, then you can't do that either. It's like, is it worth it?
Yeah. And I got in it was very cardio intensive. It was a true fight gym. And I got lean and I got in really good cardio shape and everything. But I lost, I had spent years putting on size, getting up to like 210, 215, 218 was probably the biggest I ever was. And I dropped back down to like 185, 190 doing the fighting stuff. And I felt great, but I missed having like vanity. I missed having a little bit of size.
Yeah.
And I'm just probably now several years later getting back on that path. To where I'm worried a little bit more about the aesthetics. What's a day in your life look like right now, fitness wise? Not traveling, not crazy, not unafraid.
Whoa, I was gonna ask you that question.
Okay. So
you want me to go first, or you want to go first?
I'll go first.
We could do paper, rock, scissors, and some
we
of us
could.
like men.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I was doing the same, COVID workout, the kettlebell stuff pretty much only. And then about 6 or 8 months ago, started going into the gym. And on Fridays, I would go in there and I'd do squats and bench and all the stuff that I miss doing that I'm not set up to do at home. And got to know Brandon, who you've now trained with.
Yes.
And when I just didn't, I wasn't, 2019, 2020, 2021, I had gotten a little soft. And it was at that point of like, you're either going to be, I'm old enough. Okay. You're going to now be a fatty, right? Or you're going to tighten it up and get back where you wanted to be.
You tighten it up.
So I tightened it up. I said, hey, I'm obviously not getting this done by myself. So I'm hiring somebody to make sure I do this, keep me accountable. And he's awesome. The first couple months were just like a smoke session. I think just wanted to see what I had, and dropped a bunch of weight really quick, like 2 notches down on the belt in probably 6 weeks. Happened to have a doctor's appointment regularly scheduled. And I had just been in to get my medication to go to Africa, like the month before I started with him. And like maybe a month, 6 weeks into his program, my blood pressure was down like 15, 20 points, my top number. So I mean, really, really feeling awesome, good. Yeah. That's I've had one little injury, but really feeling great and noticing some really good results. And yesterday I was on the road for work and went for a run because that's pretty much all that was available. And it was a hilly area. And I've run on those same hills for on and off for 20 something years. And it's always smoked me. I'm always winded when I get to the top. And even though I'm not running, I found myself having a ton of energy, a ton of stamina, and really good cardio just from the kind of workouts we're doing. And it's very variable. I've never done the same workout with them twice, done the same movements, but it's always mixed up. And we're doing some strength stuff. We're doing some functional stuff, a little bit of everything. You never know, one day it's just going to be outside and we're flipping tires and slinging kettlebells and all this stuff. So I really enjoy it. And then of course you start working out, you don't want to waste that. You start eating a little better. You start saying, do I really, I put all that time in and it's just a better, and then
compound effect, baby. Compound effect.
And then, I got to train tomorrow. I don't want to be hungover, so I don't drink. And then it's just positive snowball going on.
That was one of the reasons too I started boxing was I was finding myself at the bar too much. I'm like, I won't go to the bar and be hungover. I don't want to be hungover. So I'd be like, if I have fighting the next morning, I would stay in. I wouldn't do anything. So that was like one of the other reasons too. Is like,
it's a good
stop.
Save yourself from yourself. Yeah. So what do your days look like now?
Now, I'd say now if everything's good to go and we're kind of in normal land, I'd say probably 2 to 3 times I'm doing some type of fight training. So grappling or striking, sparring. I try to get at least one sparring session in with my coach. That's what we were doing, at least one ground and one stand-up day. Usually the stand-up and the sparring are on the same day. And then I'll do 1 or 2 jiu-jitsus, both gi and no gi. And then I lift probably 4 or 5 times. a week. And then the last couple months before the knee thing, I was doing mobility work, just trying to get my flexibility for mobility movements, probably 1 to 2 times a week. So I was usually kind of working out in the morning, and then there was usually 2 workouts. One was a mobility or a fight, and then I would do my weights. And I take rest as needed. Like, all right, I'm not taking this one off. Or taking this day off just so I feel it. But that's usually it is. And the weights, it's not like I will do biceps and triceps today. It's kind of like, man, what do I feel like doing? Back and tries or whatever. Okay, I need to do legs. Let's do that. Or let's add some kettlebells to this stuff. So it's just kind of a lot of band work now, a lot of band work. It's easy on the joints. So it really just depends. I listen to my body, and I really wish I would have done that a long time ago. I wish I would have used a lot more braces. Didn't try to like be the prideful dude, like, let's put as much weight because my back feels it, my knees feel it, my shoulders feel it. And the only thing I was really doing was feeding my ego. It was ridiculous. It's pathetic, to be honest with you. So I wish I would have done that differently, and just kind of listen more to my body and do smarter workouts to take care of my joints. That's what I wish I could have done. But I mean, it changes a lot. It just kind of changes with the flow, what's going on. Sometimes I might be like, hey, I need a break from fighting, and I'm going to add more mobility work. I kind of listen to my body. Sometimes like, hey, no mobility. I really want to hammer down the jiu-jitsu. All right, let's do a couple privates and go do a couple classes. And so it just depends.
Yeah, I feel like at our age, you're still very capable. You can do all the things physically that you could probably do when you're 25.
Mm-hmm.
But you need more rest afterward. You need to be more your margin for error is less, right? If you're doing it right, you're great. But screwing up even a little bit can set you back pretty seriously.
Man.
Yeah.
100%.
So I'll let you go. One last question, because I know this is one we get a lot. Young guys, gals wanting to come into the military, particularly special operations. I know you were you had a recruiting role where you would coordinate, bring folks in and put them through workouts. What advice do you have for those folks in terms of their physical preparedness?
I mean, you want to be in shape, but you don't need to go put on a pair of boots and go run on the concrete for 20 miles. Like, what's going to happen is what does happen is you get these little things called stress fractures, and people don't know they have them because for a while you don't know that you have them. And then if you start developing those and then you go do buds or some other kind of training in the military, that training is going to bring all that to the surface. And there's no reversing it. Like, it's already there. You're done. Like, you're done. You hope maybe might get rolled, but that stuff takes forever to heal. So I mean, get in shape. Just don't overtrain. Do not overtrain. Like, it doesn't matter as long as you can beat the requirements or make the requirements, which are posted on every website that deals with the stuff. You're good. I mean, you want to be in shape. I know we all want to be the best that we can be, but here's the deal. If you can run a 6-minute mile or a 7-minute 30 mile, at the end of when they are done with you, you're not going to be able to run a 12-minute mile. They are going to smoke you. Like, that's just the way it is. And just embrace that and embrace the suck factor and like march on. But mostly what I see the issue is overtraining, and you don't need to do that. Like, I'm totally against rock marching. I'm like, if you want to do that for here and there, like, go for it. But I think it's horrible on your body. And like, we have a life. The military is but a small section, and it's a job. That's it. So just be cognizant of that. Like, you've got to take care of your body.
Good advice.
What about you for the mountain hunters, man?
It's similar. Don't think you got to be, Cam Hanes is like the poster boy for ultra fit hunting guys. And that's great. That's impressive. I'm not that guy. Most people aren't. So figure out what works for you. Do things that are practical for what you're going to do. Do your homework. Know what the terrain's going to be like. Know what the temperatures are. Have the right boots. Talk to people that have been there. And, don't, build general fitness, especially, if you're like me and you live at sea level in fairly flat ground and you're trying to train for high altitude and steep terrain, you can't necessarily do that. All you can do is build yourself a baseline of fitness that will allow you to adapt and function in that environment. So to be generally fit, to not get blisters when you wear your boots, to be able to walk on an incline. My buddy who went to Alaska with me lives in South Florida. He would go to the landfill with his boots and he'd walk up and down it's the highest mountain in South Florida is a trash dump.
Hey,
so
you do what you got to do.
And it worked.
That's it.
And so I used to go to the Florida State Capitol's 22-story office building essentially. And I would go in there with my boots in the stairwell and I would walk up and down, up and down, up and down for like hour and a half. I do the same thing at FSU's football stadium. It's like use what you can, be as prepared as you can be, but don't kill yourself. Don't go into the hunt beat up because you trained so hard for it. Yeah, and ease up. Yeah, and ease up right at the end and let your body be recovered and strong and sleep and eat right. I mean, those are the parts that I'm just now figuring out is, the fuel you put in is just as important or more than the workouts you do.
100%, dude. 100%.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, hopefully this will help some people. If not, maybe entertain them. We'll do so. We didn't hit everything, so we'll do a follow up at some point. But if you have any questions or anything, put them in the comments. Let us know, and we can get back on here and do another one, try to answer. Thanks, Eddie.
This is a good one, buddy. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, appreciate it.